Welcome back. Another day of the Sara Carter Show. And I wanted you to make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and watch us on YouTube and Rumble, please. Also make sure to follow on Twitter, Facebook, and all of your other social media. We're on Instagram as well. Get all those links at saracarter.com. Don't forget, you can get all of those links at saracarter.com. And while you're there, you've got to sign up for our email list. And I'm going to tell you why. Because of the censorship issues that we've been facing, because of what we've seen happen with Google, with Twitter, on Facebook and other platforms. There's a real concern out there that we're going to lose our freedoms, that we're going to lose our rights. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. It's this idea of domestic terrorism, right? This alleged group of domestic terrorists that they have not explained to us who they are yet in the United States, that somehow it reared its ugly head on January 6th, even though right now there was about only a group of 6 to 9 people that they're indicting for like rushing and instigating the attack on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers have been, and not just lawmakers, let's talk about, Democrats, there's some Republicans, but former bureaucratic senior officials from the Obama administration that have come out and said, hey, domestic terrorism, white supremacy is on the rise. We have to go after these domestic terrorists. Be afraid, be very afraid, be afraid of your neighbor, be afraid of what can happen to your children. It sounds like some kind of strange, bubbling, percolating monster somewhere in America that we have to be scared of. I'm going to talk to you about that rhetoric and why that is so dangerous. Look, I've talked to the FBI. I've sent an email with a number of questions. I'm going to fill you in on that. I'm going to talk to you about the congressional members who right now are working on expanding domestic terrorism laws. What that means to you and your families. This is not about going after Al-Qaeda. This is not about going after Islamic State. This is not about going after foreign terrorists. This is about going after American terrorists. And you say to yourself, hey, guess what? I'm not a terrorist. They're not going to come after me. What do I do? I'm going to explain to you why you should be worried. And why these laws are so intrusive and against our Constitution. Because they are. And they won't just affect the people you think they're going to affect, those people that may or may not be a threat. But you have to entrust that the government that is in place is a government that you can trust with these tools. And let me tell you, folks, they are not trustworthy with these powerful tools. Neither the intelligence community nor law enforcement. Unfortunately, we saw what happened under the Obama administration. And I'm going to explain to you all of that and more. But first, today's podcast is sponsored by the Association of Mature American Citizens. Yes, that's AMAC. AMAC is an organization that I absolutely believe in. It is the only conservative alternative to AARP. So I want you to go to amac.us/Carter. That's amac.us/Carter. You will not regret it. It's an organization that I believe in, and it's one that I know you would love to support and believe in too. So let's get started. I want to talk to you a little bit about this idea of domestic terrorism. And just the word terror in itself in general is frightening, right? Because an act of terror, it's usually political. It comes out of nowhere. You could be with your family on a plane, right? We saw that. Remember September 11th? It was horrific. You could be sitting at a restaurant and a bomb goes off. You could be walking around the street and then a bomb goes off at a building, and it blows out and it takes all the people. We've seen this. We saw it with the Boston Marathon bombers, the Tsarnaev brothers. We've seen it with, overseas on airliners, even decades ago when the Pan Am flight was blown over Lockerbie, Scotland. It kind of resonates with us as this horrific thing that can happen. Another human being targeting innocent civilians, right? To make a political statement. And it's very, very scary. So when we hear this rhetoric that Americans, and I mean, it's rhetoric, and I'm going to tell you why it's rhetoric, because they haven't said, okay, this is the group that is causing the damage. Here are the people that we should be concerned about. They are saying that domestic terrorism, they being the government, these are lawmakers, especially after September 11th. Nancy Pelosi's been using this rhetoric. Chuck Schumer's been using the same rhetoric. Adam Schiff has been using this rhetoric. We've seen this rhetoric come out of President Biden's mouth as well, even during the inauguration. Rhetoric. Okay, that there's this domestic terrorism problem, that these domestic terrorists are associated with support for the Trump administration, and that somehow 74 plus million Americans are somehow connected to domestic terrorists. And by gosh, we have to stop it. We have to get in there and we have to stop these terrorists before they take our country and destroy our democracy. You guys, seriously, I want you to look around your neighborhood, your community, go to your church, if you even can go to church, because they've stopped so many people from going to church. Go to your grocery store, run into your friends there, look around and tell me if you are really that terrified of other Americans. Do you really believe that there are a bunch of Americans sitting around planning some kind of conspiracy to overthrow the government? They've built a fence 12 feet high with barbed wire. We've talked about this. We've talked about this on other podcasts. Around the Capitol building, miles and miles of fencing. We have National Guard troops still in Washington, D.C. on the Capitol, guarding the lawmakers from what? From what? I want you to really think about this. From what? We are told over and over again on social media, in the news, on MSNBC, CNN, wherever you're listening to, mostly the left media. And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not trying to say, oh, the right's innocent of everything. No, not always. But from the left, saying that there's all of these right-wing crazy lunatics that are out there trying to target America, trying to take down your democracy. Oh my gosh. Does that sound like a conspiracy to you? A conspiracy theory? On the left. But why? So I wrote the FBI, and the FBI responded. But first, I want to tell you what I asked them. I asked the FBI, my first question was Bank of America. And you know what? Let me play the Tucker Carlson clip for you. Tucker Carlson broke this story on his show. It was his audio. And I want you to listen to this. And it's very, very important because I'm going to expand on it a little bit and I'm going to tell you why I did that. So here's Tucker Carlson when he broke the story that Bank of America was basically giving all of your private information for all those people that were here in Washington, D.C. on or around January 6th, basically turning it over to the Bureau. I want you to hear this clip.
This show has obtained exclusively evidence that Bank of America, the second largest bank in the country with more than 60 million customers, is actively but secretly engaged in the hunt for extremists in cooperation with the government. Bank of America is, without the knowledge or the consent of its customers, sharing private information with federal law enforcement agencies. Bank of America effectively is acting as an intelligence agency, but they're not telling you about it. In the days after the January 6th riot at the Capitol, Bank of America went through its own customers' financial and transaction records, a lot of them. Now, these were the private records of Americans who had committed no crime. People who, as far as we know, had absolutely nothing to do with what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. But at the request of federal investigators, Bank of America searched its databases looking for people who fit a specific profile.
So they searched for people who fit a specific profile. And Bank of America turned over all of your private documentation, whoever was there. By the way, I was there. I was there in the morning. I don't bank with Bank of America. My question, was Bank of America the only bank? I want you to think about that. Bank of America was not the only bank. I know that from sources. Now, I don't have the other information on what the other banks were yet. I did send a very extensive and detailed email to the FBI to see if they would answer any of our questions, because guess what, FBI Bureau? I mean, as much as I think amazing, you've done amazing work in saving people's lives and, hunting down real terrorists. I have seen the Bureau weaponized by a political party over the last 4 years that is unheard of. And this is just part of that weaponization. I'm going to explain to you why. I asked the FBI, first question, was Bank of America the only bank the FBI obtained information from? If not, what other banking institutions assisted the FBI with this investigation? Second question, did the FBI request any other information from businesses connected to their ongoing investigation? For example, did the FBI obtain video surveillance from Airbnb customers or any citywide surveillance footage associated with any businesses or people? Moreover, did any of the banking institutions contacted by the FBI refuse at any point to turn over information on their customers? Like, I'm wondering, so if Bank of America did you contact Wells Fargo, right? And did they say, no, we're not going to give that to you, get a warrant? Get a warrant. You want to collect information on our customers? Get a warrant. If there's any banking institutions out there that did that, please, please, please contact SaraCarter.com and let me know. Anybody else out there? If the FBI contacted you and wanted Airbnb footage, if the FBI contacted you and wanted your business camera footage or video surveillance footage outside of your businesses, let me know. I want to know how far the investigation went. Also, did the FBI obtain any warrants to conduct these seemingly intrusive investigations? If so, FBI, how did you determine what and who you would be collecting on? Did you use surveillance footage to determine who was in the crowds, where they were needed, and what was needed to be investigated? If so, were there any other methods in place? For example, did you, FBI, cast out a large net in an effort to determine who may have crossed the line on January 6th? From rally-goer to rioter or insurrectionist? How'd you do it? Did the FBI employ the same investigative techniques and request the same information from banking institutions during the riots that led to the fire at St. John's Episcopal Church across from the White House in June 2020? That's an interesting question, isn't it? Did you? They won't answer me. Did the FBI open up a domestic terrorist investigation when people allegedly associated with BLM, that's Black Lives Matter organization, along with others connected to Antifa and other left-wing organizations, rioted and clashed with police and Secret Service outside the White House during the month of June? If so, how many banking institutions provided the FBI with information on their customers during that incident? Do you think they did? I don't think so. Also, did the FBI request cellular data on protesters, as was done on January 6, 2021? What about Portland, Oregon, guys? Riots also erupted and held the city hostage. Businesses were shuttered, looted, and burned. That was June 2020. Did the FBI employ the same tactics of investigation in Portland to determine who pillaged the city? And did the FBI investigators collect data from the banking institutions to monitor the activities of people in the area of Portland on or around about the time of the riots? Did they? Or was it just this rally with President Trump? That, my friends, those answers are so revealing. Those answers will be so revealing because guess what? The FBI wrote back and they would not answer or fully answer those questions to me. They would not explain if they did or did not employ those same tactics. The FBI instead walked around the issue and said it wasn't up to them to determine whether or not one group could be designated a domestic terrorist group. I think this is really insane here. I want you to think about this. The FBI, I know, isn't the person or the agency that can actually determine whether or not a group is associated with domestic terrorism. The lawmakers have to do that. And right now, that's exactly what they are doing. Let me tell you a little bit about Congressman Brad Schneider. He's out of the District of Illinois, and he has a new Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2021 in place, which would strengthen the federal government's efforts to prevent, report on, respond to, and investigate acts of domestic terrorism by authorizing offices dedicated to combating this threat, requiring these offices to regularly assess this threat. I mean, this is all doublespeak, right? And providing training and resources to assist state, local, and tribal law enforcement. And they're going to work with the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice and the FBI, and it will allow them to monitor, investigate, and prosecute cases of domestic terrorism. Well, how do you do that? How do you collect information to prosecute people? Well, you got to spy on them, guys. You got to listen to their phone conversations. You got to employ the assets of the intelligence community. Are they saying that now they don't even have to you don't even need to get a basic warrant? Or what type of warrant will this be? It's not going to be a FISA, right? Like 1978, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant, which will allow, if you can prove it, you can take it basically to the FISA court and say, hey, I believe this person is talking to a foreign terrorist and they've been in communication. I'd like to spy on them. I'd like to collect their data and information. And this is the reason why. But remember, this is what they did to Carter Page. And Carter Page was in no way, shape, or form a terrorist. And he was in no way, shape, or form working with enemies of the United States. And in fact, he was somebody who actually assisted the United States. But for political purposes, the FBI weaponized the FISA court system, which they had been doing for a while because, come on, under the Obama administration with Biden, when Obama was president, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court basically chided on their way out when President Obama was leaving office and they had to reveal everything that was going on. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court basically slammed them and said, you violated the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. You cannot expand your powers like this. This is unacceptable. But guess what? It's like a two-tier justice system. Nobody ever gets punished. And that wasn't it. Remember, the next 4 years during President Trump's presidency, story after story, we were breaking a lot of them. I was breaking a lot of them, coming out about how the government was spying on Americans. It's totally unacceptable. They were spying on Carter Page. They were spying on other people connected to Trump. And what about I would always say to everyone, what about you and me? What about just regular people? And now look, I was right. Look at what happened on January 6th. There were more good people than bad. The people that rushed into the Capitol, that destroyed property, they were terrible human beings for doing that. It was absolutely wrong. They shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. They rioted. It was totally out of hand. We do not accept that. That is not acceptable. I get that. But also there was an Air Force veteran, a young woman who lost her life. No one's even talking about that, right? Air Force veteran lost her life, 14 years. 14 years of her life with the Air Force, goes in, no weapon on her, nothing, gets killed. We had officers, Capitol Hill police officers, one who lost his life, the others, people trampled, other people injured. And I'm not saying that that's even acceptable. What I am saying to you is that the government used that as an excuse to expand its ability and its powers over you, right? To trample on your Fourth Amendment rights, because there were so many people there on or around the January 6th date that were just regular, everyday Americans. The FBI shouldn't be going in and asking, or the U.S. Department of Treasury, for all of your information. So here is what the FBI said to me, and I have the exact quote. I want to make sure that I read it to you so that I am fair, that I read the entire statement, right? This is what the FBI responded to my questions. The FBI conducts investigations into violations of federal law, regardless of who the actors are or their motivations, using our existing legal authorities. Our focus is on individuals who engage in illegal activity. We do not focus on group membership or ideology. The FBI does not and cannot designate domestic terrorist groups. I never asked them if they could designate someone a domestic terrorist group. I asked the FBI if they were investigating groups that they believed to be domestic terrorists. I guess they didn't even bother. They just did a large sweep, right? They just put everybody under the same umbrella, kind of swept them all in and just shook it out and see what fell out of the, the shake, right? I mean, okay, I got a couple of guys here that look pretty bad. And at the same time, they were collecting all the data of all the Americans that were there, where they ate, who they talked with, whether they withdrew money from the ATM, how close they were to the Capitol building, how far away they were from the Capitol. The FBI added that the FBI can never initiate an investigation based solely on an individual's race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, or the exercise of First Amendment rights. They said that. They didn't say anything about politics in here. Maybe they forgot that one. Maybe they think that's First Amendment rights. Maybe that political idea just fell right in there. I don't think so. I think what they're saying is we're going to investigate people based on their political ideology, right? As long as you don't cross whatever line they don't want you to cross. And then they said for any other questions as to any other banks that we may have collected data on, go ahead and contact the Treasury Department. Thanks a lot, Sarah. See you next week. We're not going to deal with that. That's what they said. Basically, just, contact the Treasury Department. But then we go back to Brad Schneider and we see that he wants to expand all of these laws, right? There are already a ton of laws in place. Think about the Patriot Act and what happened there and how that trampled on our rights. And now we're going to expand it even further? What are we going to do here? Who is going to fall underneath this scope? And I want you to think what I just said earlier. All you have is your own faith that your government will never cross that line. We always think, we're America. It's never going to happen here. Well, it did. It did happen here. It happened here over and over again during the Trump administration. Well, this is America. They're never going to violate our freedoms. We have a constitution. Yeah, but only if they believe in the Constitution and only if they're held accountable, that being the government. I want to play this audio. This is FBI Director Wray, his September testimony. The FBI is like, yeah, listen to Wray's testimony in September. Then you'll get your idea of what national security threats are, at least for domestic terrorism. So listen to this.
Now, in recent months, we've witnessed protests in various places around the country, and many members of Congress have raised a variety of questions about those protests. And although the majority of protesters have been peaceful, we have opened investigations on individuals involved in criminal activity at these protests, some of whom adhere to violent extremist agendas designed to sow discord and upheaval. Now, let me be clear. We do not investigate groups or individuals based on ideology or on the exercise of First Amendment protected activity alone. But when the ideology leads someone to commit criminal acts and pursue violence, the FBI will not hesitate to take appropriate action. That's why we've been working closely with our federal, state, and local partners to ensure the safety of our citizens, including, I should add, the safety of all those trying to exercise their First Amendment rights peacefully. We in law enforcement must keep our communities safe and secure while safeguarding our citizens' constitutional rights and civil liberties. And as I've said before, one need not and must not come at the expense of the other.
Yeah, that was September 2020. That is not the same attitude that they had here at the on Capitol Hill, January 6th. I want you to hear Ayanna Pressley here defending Antifa's attacks during that summer. Listen to this.
We have seen with movements, they will try to co-opt it and undermine it and sanitize it and whitewash it. But the Black Lives Matter activists that are today called Antifa were in the 1960s being called communists, okay? They were just as disruptive and agitating the status quo and just as impatient.
So basically, they can do the BLM, Antifa, any group that feels that they can rise up against the establishment that's on the left is basically okay, right? It's all okay. Because remember in Portland, they didn't want anybody to do anything. They didn't want the National Guard coming in. We saw that in Seattle too. They didn't want anybody coming in. The streets were like being torn up. Businesses were shuttered. We saw fires. We saw attacks. We saw riots all summer. Nobody even talks about this. My point here, just for you to understand where I'm going with this, is that The FBI and the DHS did not employ the same rhetoric or tactics then that they are doing now. I mean, there is a move and it's like fast. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so fast, you guys. It's like, we got to get these laws passed. We got to catch these domestic terrorists. Let's get these laws passed. Don't look yet. Let us pass these laws. And when we do, you guys are all going to be safe. From what? I want you to listen to Chad Wolf here. This is in the summer, and this was during the Portland riots last year. Listen to this. This was former DHS
Federal officers
secretary.
have faced assaults from bricks, baseball bats, sledgehammers, Molotov cocktails, mortar-style commercial-grade fireworks, accelerants, IEDs, and other violent weapons. Since July 4th, federal officials in Portland have made 99 arrests, and DHS officers have experienced 277 separate injuries. Those injuries range from minor to serious, to include several who may have permanent eye damage.
Did you hear what he just said? MSNBC, CNN, others, they paid no attention to this. I want you guys to understand this. I want you to really understand this. That's why we're playing that clip. All of those officers that were injured, all of the threats against those officers. Did you ever hear about the rise of domestic terrorism other than when President Trump said, we need to designate Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, which of course the Biden administration, no way. But those 74 plus million Americans who supported Trump, oh my gosh, terrified. Anybody who likes Trump is just a domestic terrorist that we're going to have to listen to their phone conversations, folks. We're going to have to investigate them before they take down our country. Do you hear the rhetoric? Do you hear the rhetoric? How dangerous this is. What the government is doing here. What they are trying to do to expand those laws. And for any of you who are like, yeah, well, whatever, because I hate, President Trump and I love President Biden and I can't stand anyone who supports President Trump, you will not be free from this. You know that, right? You know that historically, once freedoms are taken, they are taken away from everyone. And you can't trust who will be in office next. Could be President Trump, and then he'll have all those powers, right? Could be somebody else. We're just entrusting that these things are all going to play out, that you would really have to believe that the government loves you so much and cares so much about you. And that's why they have all these expansive powers, that you just be willing to turn over your family, your life, your privacy, your movements on the internet, your movements outside in public, your tracking devices, just watch over me, government, because gosh, you're amazing. I love you. I want you to babysit me and take care of me. That is not America, folks. And that is not the way we think. And and I know that this could be extraordinarily dangerous, that this can be a big problem for our country. So we have to ask these questions. We have to say, what are you doing? What's going on here? What are these powers that you're expanding on? And we need the government to pay attention. And I'm telling you this, there are people in the government right now carefully paying attention to this. They are looking at this, and there will be investigations, folks. These laws will not just pass and be allowed to pass without people actually asking and looking into this. I know, because I'm talking to folks on Capitol Hill. I'm speaking to people that are very concerned, even people within the intelligence community that are like, hey, man, no way. Do not give the government this power over the American people. These tools are meant to solely go after foreign threats to this country. And if there is a threat here in our nation that is in contact with a foreign threat, yes, we will take care of that. And yes, if there is evidence, if there are people here, even Americans, that are a threat to our government, of course the FBI is going to do its job. But we do not want to see those powers expand into our intelligence apparatus and overwhelm our system to the point where we are literally spying on each other and spying on Americans. That is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. Before I leave this subject, I want to play a quick clip about how Biden, this is Vice President Joe Biden 2007. This is a flashback moment. He's with David Letterman, and he's actually admitting that he was arrested, apparently, allegedly, because remember, he makes a lot of stuff up. Remember that arrest in South Africa we've never been able to prove? He likes to be arrested. Apparently, this is a fantasy of his, being arrested for protesting or something. So, but he said he was arrested back when he was a young man on Capitol Hill because he crossed the line. Listen to this.
What's that like walking into the great Senate chamber at 29 years old?
I walked in when I was 21 and I got arrested. It was a Saturday. I was down visiting some friends at Georgetown University. And I came up on a Saturday morning because I was fascinated with the Senate. And they had a Saturday session. I walked up those days, no guards stopping everywhere. And they just got out of session. I walked in the back. All of a sudden, I found myself in the chamber and I was stunned. I walked up, sat down, the presiding officer's seat. Guy grabbed me by the shoulder, said, "You're under arrest."
Guy grabbed me by the shoulders and said, "You're under arrest." Oh my gosh. Desecration. What are we going to do? Good thing he wasn't wearing horns on his head. Huh? How about that? That would have been a great picture. We have to use common sense, folks. We can't just buy into this rhetoric. We can't believe that we are going to be this, that we have Americans all across this country that are some kind of great direct threat. We are not. What is a threat is what's happening down at the border. And I'm going to take you there just really quickly before I move on, because we have to pay attention to this. Right now, we have hundreds of migrants. They're crowding at the border in Tijuana. I mean, that's where I covered a lot of my stories in the beginning. Remember, I told you it started in California along the Tijuana border, the estuary, moved my way up as a young reporter all the way across the border through Arizona, through Texas. I was in New Mexico. I went all the way up to Matamoros, Texas, covering that roughly 2,000-mile border with the United States and reporting on all the national security issues that we have there and all of the threats both to the people on the other side of the border and to our side of the border. We have hundreds of migrants right now in Tijuana, literally lining up at the border. They're lining up at the borders. They started Monday in Tijuana. They're ready to come in because why? Because President Biden is promising them that they will have a job here, that they will get amnesty. That's what they're hearing. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking, holy cow, this Biden administration is awesome. It's so great. We've got it back. And remember what I've said on my podcast before. This is not just this is not just about how Biden is saying it. It's about how the drug cartels and the human traffickers are saying it when they're overseas. They're saying, come on in. Do you see this administration? They want you. They want you to come to America. And they are setting it up so that they can come. Basically on media, on social media, on television, as in Honduras and in El Salvador. There's a lot of talk about how the Biden administration is welcoming people. And even if you're illegal, they are going to find a way to do it. And this one story from the Wall Street Journal, it's a great story. There's this comment in there and it says hundreds of men, women, and children of all nationalities live in these tunnels. These are the tunnels and campsites. I originally first found some of these that had never been found before when I was a young reporter, probably around 2006, 2005. And that was in the Tijuana estuary near the ocean in San Diego. And if you go to the other side of the border, so you don't cross illegally, you go through the actual border crossing. And I would drive up along the highway into Rosarita and then come down into what they call the colonias. These are these makeshift villages along the border that are pretty incredible. The homes are dilapidated, sometimes up on a hillside. I wonder, oh my gosh, when is this thing going to fall down or collapse on itself? It's really sad. It's impoverished. And the people that live there are just living with the hope of getting across. In some areas that I actually traveled to, there were large, like dump sites where people actually lived in the dumps. And I would go there and the children would be picking through the rubbish, looking for plastics, looking for glass. Really tragic situation there when you think of the poverty levels. So very, very desperate people that have maybe traveled from Central America or just looking to find a way to get across. And now it's piling up again, right? Now we're seeing all these women and children, all kinds of nationalities, people from China. I've seen that. You don't believe me? Talk to Border Patrol. People from China have been there. They've tried to cross people from Pakistan, people from Iraq. These are areas where people are getting ready to make the run and come across. And it's a lot harder right now in San Diego, actually. But there are 4 drainage tunnels that run about 70 yards under Highway 1 in the Tijuana estuary. I actually, those were the ones that I discovered, and they connect this village that I was at. It was called Colonia Laureles. It was part of the wetlands of the Tijuana River National Estuary Research Reserve. And it was literally just 15 feet from the U.S. border. Now there's a lot more fencing in that area, but the people are piling up there again, and they're getting ready to cross. It's pretty intense. I don't know what's going to happen as spring rolls around. I'm hearing from a lot of the Border Patrol agents and the people that I have been dealing with. We're going to be looking at thousands and thousands of people and undocumented children coming into the country. That is going to be a huge issue for all of us. I really believed, like I'm sure most of you believed, that 2021 was going to just be the most awesome year as compared to 2020, because nothing could be worse, it seemed. Unless there was a personal tragedy in your families and, especially with COVID, that nothing could be worse than what was happening during 2020. The world economy was shattered. We have COVID. We're on lockdowns. Our kids are not in school. Our lives feel upside down. On top of it, there's been an increase in depression, an increase in drug addiction. My gosh. 2020 and all the businesses that closed down. It was just like, please go. Let 2021 ring in. Let's get this new year started. And then 2021 comes in and we're thinking, awesome. Yes, Operation Warp Speed, the President Trump's Operation Warp Speed, not President Biden, but going to give credit to Biden as well. We've all got to work together. We're going to get people vaccinated. Our masks are going to come off. We're going to be free. We're going to see people's faces again. I'm going to go to the store and smile at everyone and wave and bother them with all my crazy small talk. It's not going to sound like I'm in a library everywhere I go. Do you guys feel that way? Because I feel like I'm literally in some kind of like horrible dream. And then I hear Fauci again. And he is like, we might have to wear our masks until 2028. No, just kidding. 2023, 2022. I'm so confused. He's like, he doesn't want us to take our masks off. Guys, he doesn't want us to take I want to see your faces. I love human beings. I know it's crazy, but I do. I love mankind. I want us to see each other. Now someone's going to get mad because I use the word mankind. Because I didn't say humankind or something crazy like that in this crazy world that we live in. Let's just figure this out together. Our confusion over mask and no mask. Our confusion over the Dr. Fauci, who the media treats like a god, like he's Zeus, like he can do no wrong. I want to play Dr. Fauci for you and why the majority of Americans, and for that matter, the world, is so confused over how to handle coronavirus. Let's start with this clip. March 2020, 60 Minutes. This was Dr. Fauci's statement. This was March 2020. Listen to this.
People should not be walking around with masks. You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet. But it's not providing the perfect protection that people think.
Not providing the perfect protection.
And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
Okay, guys, that's pretty definitive, right? That's pretty definitive. When he says that, he's a virologist, he's an epidemiologist, he's an immunologist. He knows all of these we're relying on him. He's like, don't get those masks. You're going to be fiddling with your face. You're going to be giving yourself some kind of other illness. I mean, look. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he starts telling us that we've got to be wearing those masks. Like, we're not going to remember this statement. Like, we're not going to question. And for the most part, no journalists really questioned him. He just made stuff up. He just steamrolled them. He didn't give a direct answer. This is a guy that's supposed to be of the science. So when he tells me this in March and he's saying it's not going to do that much, I believe him. Now listen as he backtracks. This is June 17th, 2020.
Masks are not 100% protective. However, they certainly are better than not wearing a mask, both to prevent you, if you happen to be a person who maybe feels well but has an asymptomatic infection that you don't even know about, to prevent you from infecting someone else. But also, it can protect to a certain degree, not 100%, in protecting you from getting infected from someone who either is breathing or coughing or sneezing or singing or whatever
just alive.
It is in which the droplets or the aerosols go out.
I thought that he had said just in March that it really wouldn't do anything, that these droplets, you know, like if you're just alive and talking to someone, you're going to be a potential problem. Now, this is June 17th. So now we're really confused, right? So now they have to rearrange everything, the messaging, the narration. But we've never lived in a time like this before, where we can be so easily brainwashed, I swear to you, through the media. It's like the media says one thing and then moves on to the next thing, and everybody kind of forgets, even though it exists there in like some historical form, like video. It's like, no, now you have to wear masks. So let's just move to November 15th. This is Fauci talking about vaccinating people and whether those people that had been vaccinated still need to wear masks. He is now talking to Jake Tapper on CNN, November 15th, 2020. Listen to this.
For Pfizer, it's 2 doses. I'm not sure what it is for Moderna or the other vaccines coming down the pike. But once the process is complete, does that mean they can take off their masks? They don't have to social distance? They can just go about their lives as before?
You know, I would recommend that that's not the case. I would recommend you have an added area of protection. Obviously, with a 90+% effective vaccine, you could feel much more confident. But I would recommend to people to not abandon all public health measures just because you've been vaccinated. Because even though for the general population, it might be 90 to 95% effective, you don't necessarily know for you how effective it is.
What? Why do we get vaccinated anyways, if it's not to be effective? I want to tell you guys, I traveled throughout the Middle East as a child in a time when there were so many diseases. And I still remember going with my mom. I must have been like 5.5 because I got to Saudi Arabia when I was 6, and I had to go to the doctor, and I had all these vaccinations they had to give me. And I ran in the clinic and I was a skinny kid. I hid between some filing cabinets. They could not find me for a few hours because I was like, I am not getting those shots. That ain't happening. This is not going to happen. Boy, did it happen. And everybody was mad because they could not find me. And my mom took me to Saudi Arabia. I got the shots. I didn't wear a mask. Went on a plane. I traveled all over Africa. I traveled Saudi Arabia. I traveled all over the region. I was a young kid. My mom traveled. My dad traveled. We got the flu here and there. We got sick here and there. We had all of the shots. And of course, it's always a risk. You can end up catching something. I traveled all through Afghanistan. I traveled through Iraq. There are things that are there. Malaria, diphtheria. There's things that are in remote villages, that viruses that maybe my body is not accustomed to. But that doesn't stop me from living life. It sounded like what Fauci said on November 15th is like, oh, heck. Although in March, we didn't need to wear a mask, March 2020, June 17th, 2020, he's like, maybe you're going to want to wear the mask a little bit, you know, people singing, ha, 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 telling a little joke here or there. And then with Jake Tapper on November 15th, he's like, okay, even if you're vaccinated, you're still, I'm not saying, unless we're 95%, is anyone 95%? When I walk out of my house every single day, to go to work or to drive my car or to board a plane or to cross the street or to go for a run. I mean, am I 100% guaranteed that nothing is going to happen to me? Am I? Are you? Because I would love to know if you are. Who are you talking to and what kind of magical powers you have? Because nothing is guaranteed. I can tell you that. Now I want you to listen to Dr. Fauci as he talks to Bret Baier. This is this year, February 8th. He is talking to, I love Bret Baier on Fox News. Listen to this interview.
When is that time? If you had to guess, going to a sports game, going to a theater, going to a concert without a mask?
You know, Brett, that will really be dependent upon how we get the level of virus in the community down. If we can get, and I have used this as an estimate, it's not definitive, that if we can get 70 to 85% of our population vaccinated and get to what we would hope would be to a degree of herd immunity, which really is an umbrella or a veil of protection against the community, where the level of virus is so low, it's not a threat at all, then at that point you could start thinking in terms of not having to have uniform wearing of masks.
Oh gosh, that changes everything. Not a threat at all. So what he's actually saying is that you will all be wearing masks for the rest of your life because there is always a threat. Whether it's COVID-19, whether it's some bacteria, whether it's like a virus, a flu, whether it's pneumonia, whether it's, I mean, even if we, whatever it is, I don't know. There's something out there that we haven't figured out yet. I know it. Wearing a mask forever. Wearing a mask forever. We don't want any threats. Eventually, they're going to tell us not to leave our house again. You could just order on Amazon. Bezos will be so happy about that. He will make so much money. So much money. So much more money than he's already making, right? We're just going to have little drones drop our stuff off at home and we're all going to work from the shelter of our homes because, oh gosh, what could be going on out there? You guys, this is not healthy. Do you think it's healthy that we walk around and we don't even see each other's faces? That our children go to school and have a mask on their face all day? That is so not, that is just beyond me. I like to see people's faces. There is a certain feeling, a sense of like, hi, and you see someone's face and you talk to a stranger and you wave at them and you hope they're not like a serial killer. Hey, how you doing? You know, life is full of risks. Just living is risky. Just living. I know it's scary. We don't even want to talk about it. We all go somewhere. We all die. Whatever your belief is your belief. But that's just a fact of life. There is nothing we can do to change that unless we download ourselves into one of Elon Musk's computers. I'm sure of it. Right? So what is going on here? Why? Why are these folks like Dr. Fauci so determined to keep us in masks? I want you to listen to my last clip. This is it. Listen to this. You don't want to miss this. Dr. Fauci talking to Dana Bash on CNN about masks.
I think Americans might have to wear masks into 2022.
You know, because it depends on the level of dynamics of virus that's in the community. And that's really important because that gets back to something again that you said. If you see the level coming down really, really very low, I want it to keep going down to a baseline that's so low that there's virtually no threat, or not no, it'll never be zero, but a minimal threat that you will be exposed to someone who is infected. So if you combine getting most of the people in the country vaccinated with getting the level of virus in the community very, very low, then I believe you're going to be able to say, you know, for the most part, we don't necessarily have to wear masks.
What? I don't even know what this guy's talking about. I mean, how is this guy in charge? How is he even in charge? Right? How is this man in charge of American policy on mask wearing? Did you ever think we would come to this time? I feel terrible for people that are affected by COVID-19. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. But we are seeing some kind of overreach into our own ability, our own liberties, our own civil liberties that we have never seen in this country before. And don't come at me with, oh, masks save lives. Okay, then just wear masks forever. You can make that choice for yourself. I'm totally fine. If you want to cover your face for the rest of your life, cover your face. But I had COVID. My daughter had COVID. My husband had COVID. Thankfully, it was not what other people have experienced. I've had the flu, and thankfully, it was not what some people that I have known have experienced. I've known people who have literally died from the flu, not from COVID, right? Thankfully not. But I am pretty much, according to my doctor, I can't give it or receive it right now. I can't give or receive COVID right now. So why am I forced to wear a mask? And someone told me it was to make other people feel better. Whoa, stop the bus right there. So now you're passing policy on making other people feel better. So it's kind of like virtue signaling, right? Like I'm just going to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to make you feel better. So where does that stop? Where does that stop? When does it stop? You need to think about that because it's going to affect you in your future and in your life and in the future of the lives of your children and of our nation. We should not be doing that to just make other people feel better unless it's a choice we want to make for ourselves. Look, this is America. You want to walk around with a mask all day on your face? Go right at it. Have at it. Have at it. But don't shut down my business. Don't shut down my schools. Don't shut down the theaters. Don't shut down my life because you want me to virtue signal to people that are too scared to walk out of the house without a mask when there's a vaccine and when there is herd immunity. Because since the beginning of mankind, since the very moment we either showed up here, for those of you who are religious, as Adam and Eve or whatever religion you believe, or we stood up on two legs, there have been viruses. And they will exist until the end of time. And there is nothing, unfortunately, other than modern science right now to help us get through it all. But let's use our common sense, folks. Our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. Mike created the new Giza Dream bed sheets. They're amazing. I use them. I love them. You will receive 2 for one low price plus free shipping. Call 1-800-685-7221. Use the promo code Carter. Here's a story that I'm going to end with because we cannot leave the poor Bean Dad alone. I know you're saying, what? Bean Dad? Who's the Bean Dad? Remember the guy, John Roderick, who he got the nickname Bean Dad because of his tweets about, making his 9-year-old daughter figure out how to use a can opener if she wanted to eat the beans. He wanted her to learn how to use a can and wanted her to, be independent. It came across all wrong. Obviously, Bean Dad became his nickname and not in a good way. People thought that he was abusing his child, that she was starving to death somehow because she couldn't open the can of beans with a can opener. So the thread apparently went viral. All these people, and this is again, the society that we have created now for ourselves, right? This crazy, virtue signaling society. Child Protective Services was contacted by a number of people that were freaking out on the internet and on social media about Bean Dad. He's not letting his kid eat and they're starving them to death. And so people showed up. CPS showed up at his house, Child Protective Services. And he talked about it on his podcast, Roderick on the Line, his weekly podcast with Merlin Mann. And he said 12 people reported him to CPS and they were obligated to come and interview his family and they interrogated his daughter. Can you believe that? His 9-year-old daughter was being interrogated by a CPS, a Child Protective Services person. Do you love your dad? Is your dad good to you? Did your dad give you beans for dinner or not? Did you ever, I can imagine these questions, but the guy's CPS, Child Protective Services, is doing their job. But all of these people felt the need to call Child Protective Services because they were so concerned. And we've heard all the craziness too. I mean, I'm talking like really whacked out stuff out there. Like I've heard, feminists saying now that, people should have their children, like Trump people, remember that, should have their children removed from the home and they should be going to education, re-education camps. Remember all of that with the kids? I mean, this is just crazy times. Listen to what he says before I let you go. This is so great. Apparently, one investigator spoke to Roderick's daughter for about an hour. I was talking to her privately and she said, what do you like about your dad? And what do you not like about your dad? And apparently Roderick's daughter told him about this, afterwards, what she answered. It turns out that she doesn't like the fact that he gets tired of playing Legos faster than she does. So there you go. Roderick was obviously let off the hook. He will no longer be posting anything about can openers or beans or feeding his kids. At least I think he's learned his lesson that the virtue signaling society will report on him. Remember this, folks? People could be watching you anywhere now. It's like we don't even have to be communist Cuba. We don't even have to be, living in the old Soviet days. We just live in a cancel culture, some kind of weird evolution that we have created with this generation of young people that feel like they need to tell everybody how to live their life, what to do with their life, and babysit them. I hope we don't continue down this very dangerous path because this will literally transform America. It will transform the Constitution. It'll basically make the Constitution null and void in the end, and we will have a completely different society. And on that really happy note, this has been the Sara Carter Show. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Remember, you can get all of my social media links. Yes, all the ones that we will be censored on at SaraACarter.com. Don't forget to go to SaraACarter.com. If you want to see this video on video, YouTube, or go to Rumble. Rumble's awesome. We're posting all of our stuff on Rumble. They will not censor us. YouTube has censored us in the past. Again, remember, this is America. We love it. We defend it. This is the reason why I'm doing this podcast. And it is the reason why every day I feel blessed to talk to you. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And remember, this is where we're taking the story back. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. The most important question, I think, for so many people out there is how much does AMAC membership cost? What does it cost the regular consumer?
Yeah, so for $16 a year, okay, or less, you can join at a 1, 3, or 5-year membership. You get a couple of things. You get the benefits. You get a great subscription to a magazine. So for $16, you're going to receive a bi-monthly magazine. But your voice is now going to be heard in Washington. We take our marching orders from you. If you stand for faith, family, freedom, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the greatness of America, if you believe in individual freedoms and everything you just said, Sarah, $16 is not a lot of money to join the 2.3 million members that are really fighting hard to ensure that America remains the best country in the world.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. For more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.